It ran a 13.9 at the drag strip, stock from the factory, in 1987, and it wasn't a Corvette. Nobody at GM was supposed to build this car. Corporate policy said Buick didn't get performance. The Corvette division had that locked down. Chevrolet owned the muscle car narrative. But a handful of engineers at Buick went around that policy, quietly, deliberately. What they produced was a black slab of turbocharged menace that beat the Corvette in a straight line. And GM's own executives didn't want that on record. Fast forward to now. Kendrick Lamar references this car, and suddenly the collector market breaks. Numbers matching 1987 Grand Nationals that sold for $28,000 in 2019 are now clearing $75,000 at Barrett-Jackson. That is not normal collector appreciation. That is a cultural event colliding with a suppressed performance legend. And we're going to break down exactly how both things happened. Let's start where this story actually starts. Not on a drag strip, but in a corporate memo. By 1982, GM's internal performance hierarchy was rigid. Chevrolet got the Corvette, Pontiac got the Trans Am, Buick got family sedans, and a NASCAR sponsorship that was mostly about brand image. The NASCAR angle is key. Buick had been racing a regal body on the oval tracks. And the homologation rules, the rules that said your race car had to share DNA with something you could actually buy, gave Buick engineers a legal opening. They took that opening and ran straight through it. The platform was the G-Body Regal, rear-wheel drive, simple, proven, the same bones Chevrolet used for the Monte Carlo. But Buick's engineers didn't stuff a big block in it. They did something GM had never greenlit for a street car before. A turbocharged 3.8-liter V6, intercooled, sequential fuel injection in 1984. This wasn't the turbo era of gutless four-cylinders in economy cars. This was a purpose-built forced induction unit that rewrote what a V6 could do. The factory rating in 1987 was 245 horsepower and 355 pound-feet of torque. GM underrated it. The actual output was closer to 300 horsepower at the crank. Road and Track tested it. They clocked 0-60 in 4.9 seconds. The 1987 Corvette ran 0-60 in 5.1 seconds. Let that settle. A Buick with a V6 beat America's sports car in a straight line. And every single one of them came from the factory painted black. That wasn't a coincidence. Buick's product team made the decision deliberately. One color, maximum visual menace. No chrome, blacked out trim. Car and Driver called it the fastest American production car you can buy. Not the fastest Buick, the fastest American production car, period. Now here's where the suppression angle comes in. Chevrolet's Corvette team was not happy. You had a family-oriented brand, Buick, publicly embarrassing the flagship performance vehicle of GM's most performance-focused division. Internal pressure mounted, and in late 1987, GM pulled the plug on the Grand National program entirely. The last model year was 1987. No 1988. No successor. Gone. But before it died, Buick and ASC McLaren did one last thing. They built the GNX, Grand National Experimental, 547 units, boosted to 300 horsepower, officially. Real output was documented at 276 rear-wheel horsepower on conservative dynos, which translates to north of 320 at the crank. The GNX ran a 13.43 quarter-mile, stock, zero modifications, faster than a Ferrari 328. Then the line went dark. 1987 was it? For the next 2 decades, the Grand National lived in the underground. Street racers knew it. Drag strip regulars knew it. The Hot Rod magazine crowd knew every spec by memory. But mainstream culture had moved on. The car had no Hollywood moment, no major franchise tie-in. Prices in the early 2000s reflected that erasure. A clean, low-mile 1987 Grand National could be had for under $15,000. $15,000 for the car that beat the Corvette. That is the suppression legacy. Not just what GM did in 1987, but what the culture did for 20 years after. Now we get to Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick is a Compton kid. Compton has a deep relationship with the Buick Grand National, specifically the late 1980s street culture, where the car was both a status symbol and a weapon of choice for street racing. The Grand National appears in Kendrick's visual universe with specific intentionality. It's not set dressing, it's a cultural signifier. When one of the most critically decorated artists of a generation ties himself publicly to a specific car, that car becomes a totem. And totems don't depreciate, they appreciate. The timing of the cultural moment overlapped with something already building in the collector car world. The Gen X and elder millennial buyers, people who grew up seeing the Grand National as the neighborhood's baddest car, were hitting peak earning years. That's the double ignition. Nostalgia money meeting cultural validation. The market didn't just move, it detonated. Let's put hard numbers on this. In 2018, Hagerty's valuation index had a concourse condition 1987 Grand National at $41,000. By 2023, that same condition tier had crossed $72,000, a 75% increase in 5 years. Numbers matching GNX units, all 547 of them, are in a completely different stratosphere. A documented low-mileage GNX sold at Mecum Kissimmee in 2022 for $19,500, nearly $200,000 for a Buick. That sentence would have been laughed out of any collector car conversation in 2005. And here's the collector dynamic that most people miss. The Grand National was only built for 4 model years, 1984 through 1987. Total production across all 4 years was approximately 67,000 units. That sounds like a lot until you start filtering. Filter for 1987 only. The peak performance year, 20,193 units built. Now filter for numbers, matching documented survivors with original drivetrain. The Grand National Registry estimates fewer than 4,000 genuinely intact examples remain. 4,000 cars against a collector base that is actively and aggressively expanding. That's a supply and demand problem that only runs in one direction, and it accelerated the moment the Grand National entered mainstream cultural conversation. There's another factor that gets overlooked. The Grand National's appeal crosses demographic lines that almost no other collector car does. Traditional muscle car collectors are predominantly older, white, and Sun Belt based. The Grand National brings in urban buyers, hip-hop culture buyers, and a younger collector cohort that had never touched the muscle car market before. Kendrick didn't create that demographic, but he validated it at a scale nothing else could. Now let's go back to the drag strip, because the performance story is inseparable from the collector story. The 3.8 turbo V6 made its power differently from any V8 muscle car before it. The torque came on hard, 355 pound-feet, and it came on low, under 2,800 RPM. That low RPM torque delivery on a rear-wheel drive car with street tires meant one thing at the drag strip. The tires broke loose instantly unless the driver managed launch carefully. Drivers who knew the car, who knew to stage at 1,800 RPM and feed the boost, were running 13.5s all day, consistently. Drivers who treated it like a V8 muscle car spun tires and ran 14.2s. The Grand National was an instrument. It rewarded precision, and that precision built a community. The Grand National clubs, the Turbo Buick forums, the tech databases, they predate the internet car culture we know today. These people were sharing dyno data via mail and phone in the late 1980s. That community kept the car's legend alive through 2 decades of cultural obscurity. They are the reason there are 4,000 documented survivors instead of 400. Now, the modification ecosystem, because the Grand National's aftermarket story is directly relevant to what collectors are buying and what they're paying. A stock 1987 Grand National runs 13.9. A Grand National with a simple boost increase to 20 psi. Factory ran 15 psi, runs 13.1. Add a chip tune and a free-flowing exhaust, and you're into the 12s. But here's the collector's nightmare hidden inside that fact. Most Grand Nationals have been modified. The appeal of the platform is so strong, the gain so easy, that the majority of surviving cars have had the boost turned up, the chip swapped, the exhaust changed. A genuinely stock, unmodified, numbers-matching 1987 Grand National is rarer than the production numbers suggest, and the market is now pricing that rarity at a significant premium. Hagerty's Enthusiast Index flagged the Grand National as one of the top 5 most searched collector cars on their platform in 2023. The search volume from buyers under 45 tripled compared to 2020. That search volume doesn't become sales overnight, but it is the leading indicator. The buyers are coming. The inventory isn't growing. Legacy and aftermath. Here's where we settle this. The Buick Grand National proved something GM's corporate structure was designed to prevent being proved. A non-Corvette, non-V8 platform could beat America's sports car. That fact was buried for 20 years. The rule changes that followed, the tightening of GM's divisional performance policies in the 1990s, were in part a reaction to what Buick had done. The engineers had embarrassed the hierarchy. The hierarchy made sure it couldn't happen again. And now in 2024, a numbers-matching survivor is a financial asset. The suppression that was supposed to erase the car's legacy instead crystallized it. Scarcity is the only thing more powerful than reputation. You want the verdict? Here it is. The 1987 Buick Grand National was the fastest American production car of its year. Built by engineers who went around corporate, killed by executives who felt threatened, rediscovered by a culture that understood its symbolism, and is now worth 3 times what the market thought it was 5 years ago. That's not a coincidence. That's a correction. If you had one parked in your neighborhood as a kid, if you know what it felt like when that black car rolled past and everything got quiet, drop that in the comments. And if you want to know which muscle car the market is sleeping on right now, the same way they slept on the Grand National, that video is right here. Don't miss it.